I got a phone call one day from a smart, irascible, savvy guy who said, I got an idea for a TV show. And he laid out his vision, and I said, I don't know. I'm already kind of sick of my own voice. I'm on the radio 6 days a week. But because he's also tenacious, he kept coming and coming. Kept talking, cajoling, working it. And guess what? The show ended up being called Enough Said. And Fox 9 has been kind enough to give it a chance to see if it can go somewhere. And as some of you now know, we've lost a man with the vision. Our guy, Ron Rosenbaum, a Minnesota original, has died at the age of 68. And that makes all of us quite sad. He'd roll his eyes at this, but I want you to know about the last Enough Said show he did. When I met him in the lobby before the program began, he sounded weak. I was a little concerned. And when I left him after the show, he seemed utterly and completely spent, and he had his wife Lucy drive him home. But in between, during the show, he was Ron. Full-on Ron, gregarious, loud, funny, opinionated, insightful, and committed. We were not reinventing TV here. Both of us knew that. But whatever we were doing, Ron was committed to it. See, as bad as he already felt, he was bound and determined to do that one more show with me and let it all out there. Didn't matter how bad he felt. He wanted one more show, even though he knew it would be his last. Meant a lot to me, and I hope to the viewers, who he never took for granted. Where does the show go from here? Well, we're talking about that. Just know that however we go forward, Ron's vision and his spirit will be a part of whatever we do in this studio, however long we are on the air. And you know, it is kind of funny because at the end of every show we did, when the cameras were off, he'd look at me and he'd say, that went really fast today, didn't it? And I'd roll my eyes and say, Ron, you say that every week. What I wouldn't give to be able to roll my eyes even one more time.
Yeah, exactly. If the GOP tries to steal the election from Trump, these people will go completely nuts because their whole...
And they'll have a point.
Well, they'll have a point in their whole...
They voted.
But their whole sort of reason for being is we've been done in.
Yeah.
It's all pandering, and in all honesty, Dan, I don't believe anything either of them say is actually going to happen in real life. So when you ask them, they think we're stupid. Of course they think we're stupid, and we may be stupid. He's almost a warmed-over Republican, but he's not a Republican. And because he's not a Republican, and because he isn't to the right of Scalia, in my opinion, I agree with the Vegas odds maker.
It won't happen.
The odds of it happening are 0.
But
we don't even have to think of what our emotions are. There's only 5. And you just press a button, and this is how I feel. What? God forbid you should write a letter to somebody and say,
why?
But people all over the country are saying, I can't wait to come to Minnesota in February because if I do, I'm going to get Post-it notes. That's really exciting. My recommendation, I'd give little thermometers so people can tell their friends, I've been in the coldest place on earth.
It's hard to believe. It's impossible to believe that the voice is stilled. I love watching those clips. And you know, one of the things for me on Ron that's important is he often, with me, whether it was radio or TV, would surprise me. You know, I like to think of him as an equal opportunity ripper or analyst, whatever. He didn't really, you know, he didn't seem all that concerned about who he was going after. It wasn't predictable, and in this day and age, on a lot of the talk shows and a lot of talking heads, it's like, okay, we get one guy who's going to take this position, and one guy's going to take the other position, and they're never going to surprise you. Ron surprised me almost every time we had him on.
He liked ripping everybody. I think that was the key, right? Not that he liked being negative and that he liked criticizing, but if he saw something that he didn't agree with or that didn't make sense, he was not shy about it, right?
True.
He was going to let you know his opinion, and he would do that as your friend. As much as he loved you and loved this show and loved the radio show, he would tell you if he thought the show was bad or if the guest wasn't up to the standard he thought you had already set.
The phone call would be something like this. I heard so-and-so on with you. I didn't like it.
How long are you going to do that?
And it was never difficult to know where he stood, but that's what you respect. That's part of what you respect about him, that you're getting some unvarnished stuff, but you're getting a guy who's gonna tell you what he really feels.
And the clips that were just played, that was Ron, right? But when I think of him now in the last week or so, I always think about It was a show with him all the time.
Right.
And that's not just on TV. That's not just on the radio. The best Ron Rosenbaum shows were when we were just hanging out, right? When we were at your house, or we were at a birthday party for a friend, or I remember out on a boat on Lake Minnetonka. The same Ron that viewers see and that listeners heard is the Ron that you would get in those situations. And it was kind of his show no matter where we were, what we were doing. And he was a really fun guy to be around in that regard.
And as you say, I don't want to use the life of the party cliche because that sounds like such a cliche. He wasn't a goofball. He wasn't crazy, but he did kind of bring different groups together and kind of throw out interesting things. And for all of us, that's going to be another big part of the loss, the human loss. He understood it was a combination of trying to get something insightful across to people, and that it was show business. He did get that was part of it. In fact, why don't we let Ron have the last word for the rest of this segment? Engage in this activity.
Let's look at the statistics. Fantasy football is horrible. It's destroying people because only 20% of the people play who win.
Right.
What percentage of the people who play the Powerball win? You might have better odds not playing the Powerball to win than if you actually play. You know, I've advocated a wall between us and Wisconsin.
I think
I
we
don't
all
want
have.
anybody from Wisconsin moving here, and I don't want this guy moving here. He doesn't because he doesn't like Minnesota. Don't play this game of sucking up. As far as I'm concerned, we need a wall. I'm with Donald Trump on that only. I want the wall around Minnesota.
I thought
it's one thing when Konopka calls for you to be Ken, but once they get the rabbit, your future
It's a little bit too
is
much.
clearly going to be limited. By the way, is this too much democracy now? Are the inmates running the asylum with social media?
Yes.
You know, you can put something on social media and everybody has to respond to it.
And you know what part of this?
He doesn't even know what to make of it, Dan. He's going places and people are treating him like he's Mick Jagger. You were there that night. Women literally melted when he walked in the room.
They're throwing underwear at him, for God's sake. God, I thought that was a little much.
Well, I don't know. One of them was with you, wasn't she? It's one thing to have the college help with laundry. It's another thing for the kids to say, I don't even know how to do it. I can't even imagine when I went to college calling my mother and say, how do you do it?
She'd have mocked you.
First of all, she wouldn't have taken the call anyway.
Welcome back to Enough Said. My name is Dan Barrero. Justin Gard is here with me. Lori Fisher as well. And Ron Rosenbaum was very much a big on with the show guy. And so we're going to plow ahead because that's what he believed in, and that's what we're going to try to do as artfully as we possibly can, even with the heavy hearts that we have. Lori's going to help us get started again. Thanks, Lori.
Yes, Ron was very passionate. It's official. Prince died from overdosing on the prescription drug fentanyl. The drug is used to treat severe pain and is about 100 times stronger than morphine.
It can be prescribed for chronic pain or for acute pain. It's generally, it's a very strong pain medicine, and so it can be very dangerous if people think that they're taking a certain amount of like oxycodone and then they switch to fentanyl. The doses are so much different that it really leaves them at risk for having overdoses.
Painkillers were a major focus in reports following Prince's death back in April. Dan.
Well, first of all, you know, I know there's a lot of frustration among some Prince fans about the way this story was covered and whether it got sleazy and we were getting too nosy and sensationalizing the story. I got to say, in this case, in terms of a lot of the reporting, it's turned out to be pretty accurate. I don't know if we knew it was fentanyl, but we knew, or we thought we knew on the basis of the reporting, this was the direction it was going in. I think compared to a lot of stories, it didn't go, it didn't get as crazy as it can. And, you know, I don't think you have to make a moral judgment here on the basis of what we know about, you know, Prince doing this to himself to a certain extent, as long as you're consistent with that. Because I tend to think when it's someone we don't know, we do make moral judgments.
We do.
I don't want us to be in a situation, well, because it's Prince and we loved his music, that we're going to go a different route. If you're consistent with that, fine, if you don't want to get into the idea of judging someone who's dealing with whatever he was dealing with.
This makes it sadly more tragic than it was because it could have been prevented at some point, right? But it was, you hit it. This was the inevitable conclusion. How long had we been talking about this? The reports that painkillers were in his system right away, and everybody said, leave him alone. He doesn't want to go through that publicly.
Emergency stop in Moline.
Moline, they had to do it, and all those rumors, the dots got connected here. I've been thinking a lot about this because the first time we talked about it on this show, we said, remember, Prince is responsible for Prince. Yeah. Because originally everybody said, who are the doctors? Why are they giving him this stuff? And how are the people letting him do this? I think what we're learning is how difficult it must be to, we talk about accountability a lot, hold celebrities accountable because they're going to do whatever they want. And the people around them, the doctors that want to be associated with Prince, the people who have been with him for how many years, right? 40, 50 years they've been with this guy. They're not maybe stepping in. They stepped in at the end, but it was too late.
That's true. Although I will say sometimes even there are occasions where people do try to step in. And in the end, what all the counselors I've talked to have said is ultimately the person has to want to. You can try and try and try.
Yep.
And so there may have been some enablers there. There may have been some others who tried to step in. But he's got to come to that place.
Yeah, on that note, we have to move on. Let's talk about more prescription drugs. The University of Minnesota placing its legendary wrestling coach Jay Robinson on paid leave. This comes after a Fox 9 investigation into the abuse of the prescription drug Xanax by members of the team. We caught up with the U's new athletic director, Mark Coyle. Take a listen.
I can tell you I met with Coach Robinson this morning, and we put him on paid administrative leave while we do our investigation.
Why was that a necessary step, do you believe?
President Kaler and I had conversations about that, and given the seriousness of the allegations in the beginning of the internal investigation with the Office of General Counsel, I felt that was the best thing to do at this time.
Now, this is just his second day on the job. What a welcome. Dan.
Yeah, well,
welcome to Minnesota.
That's it. Yeah, well, I mean, he knew there was trouble. I don't know if he knew about this particular trouble. To me, the interesting part about this is I think we're already getting a bit of a feel for Jay Robinson ain't going to go quietly into the night, which surprises no one who has ever talked to him or spent any time around him. He's firing back, at least to the extent through his attorney that, hey, I let some people, maybe two superiors, know what was going on here. It's vague on how much he told them. And I don't think this lets Robinson off the hook. I think there's still lots of questions he needs to answer. But I think the strategy is going to be, hey, I tried to bring at least some of this up. They didn't seem all that interested. And so then that's why I decided to be judge, jury, and executioner. Good luck with that on a legal side. In terms of whether that saves him at the U, it may not save him. I don't think it probably won't. But we do need to find out what the other individuals knew and how interested they were in pursuing wherever he seemed to be wanting to go, if indeed this report is true.
Does it surprise you that now Robinson has basically gone radio silent, though? Even in the letter that Mark Coyle wrote to him, he said, we wanted to bring you in for an interview to talk about this stuff because there's now two investigations, internal, and now there's the police investigation. And for all we know,
he searched his home.
Exactly, and Jay Robinson now is more or less letting his attorney take all the questions and take everything. I'm kind of surprised that he at least isn't being a little bit more cooperative. I know he's under siege, but what a test for Mark Coyle. I mean, that video that we just saw, they're on the Goodwill tour that they do every year, trying to rally Gopher Nation.
And now this is he's got to answer questions.
Jay Robinson is supposed to be on that tour at least once or twice, and now that's the elephant in the room that's just hanging there.
There's a thing looming over both of these stories when it comes to opioids, certainly, that amazed me, that once upon a time, on the basis of a study that I'm told included like 38 patients in 1986. It was determined by a couple doctors, this stuff is not that addicting. It's really helpful on pain, but it's not that addicting. Well, we found out the rest of the world
same people
exactly
that did skim milk.
Addicting and lethal this stuff is, and yet it's out there everywhere, and a lot of people have gotten used to the benefits of it takes away pain.
And not even necessarily pain. I mean, the athletes were using it for other reasons. That's the dark side.
Let's move on to the election. House Speaker Paul Ryan officially gives his support to Donald Trump. This comes as Hillary Clinton blasts Trump for what she calls, quote, chaotic approach to foreign policy, calling him unfit to be president. They are both using some strong words. I want you to listen to this.
He has said that he would order our military to carry out torture. He praises dictators. This is not someone who should ever have the nuclear codes. Making Donald Trump our commander-in-chief would be a historic mistake.
That was a phony speech. That was a Donald Trump hit job. I will say this, Hillary Clinton has to go to jail, okay? She has to go to jail.
There's less than 1 week before the California primary, and it's a tight race there between Clinton and Bernie Sanders.
Well, the thing, again, that I'm going to sound like a broken record. Trump's got Hillary Clinton's on the run the last week with the report on the emails, which we talked about some last week. Bernie Sanders, who clearly ain't giving up the ghost, and then now the strategy is we're going to we're going to have the superdelegates think it out at the convention, whether that leads to anything. Point is, she's on the run. So what does this idiot do? He doubles down on this judge on my Trump University case, who happens to have been born in Indiana, my home state. He's Mexican. Well, now he's saying, well, now Mexican heritage. But at first it was Mexican.
Yep.
And so he's disqualified from doing anything related to Trump University, and embarrassing. Even a bunch of Fox News people have hammered him for that, which is the ultimate test. And so you can say, well, he's playing to the base, and I won't disagree. But once again, how stupid do you have to be, and how pathetic a message to send that someone of Mexican descent who was born in this country, a judge, it has no chance to be objective about Trump University because of other issues. It's beyond embarrassing.
For normal people like you and me, for reasonable people.
But he needs some of us
to
win.
A few. He needs a few of us.
Yeah.
He needs probably more than a few, but he's already got a lot of people that probably said, that makes sense. But what do you think of Clinton's speech? Because I thought it was fantastic.
It was one of her best ones.
It was a speech that we've never heard her give, and you usually hear the phrase, you don't want to roll around with the pig, right? Because you both get muddy, and the pig likes it. I think that almost has to be the strategy now with Trump, because dismissing him and kind of taking the high road, I think you got to go decisive, and I think you have to go cheap shots like she did. I thought it was a really good speech.
It was a good speech. She had a lot of good lines. Looks like they've been saving them up.
They have.
And they put them all together. And she got away from that sing-songy speech pattern that she gives that is awful. So I don't know. Maybe they did a new speech coach. I'm not exactly sure. She did very well, but again, he's failing because she should be on the defensive.
Coming up on Enough Said.
I blame the zoo a lot more than I blame the parents. Because
if you're going to blame anybody, yes.
We're both parents, and we think we're good parents. You can be good.
Hi, my son fell in the zoo exhibit at the gorillas. It's a petting zoo. My son fell in with the gorilla. There's a male gorilla standing over him. I need someone to contact the zoo, please. Isaiah, be calm. Be calm. Be calm. Be calm. He's dragging my son. I can't watch this.
Remember Cecil the lion?
Very well.
We now have, that was a huge controversy. Cecil was the name of the lion, right? Not the dentist.
Cecil the lion. Walter Palmer was the dentist. This is Harambee.
Harambee is the gorilla involved in this particular case. Cincinnati Zoo. The controversy of the week, sadly.
Definitely.
Because ultimately the decision was made to save the 4-year-old boy. Harambee, very sadly, had to be killed. And it has started this frenzy. A lot of people have contrasted this with, we have, especially in major cities, shootings going on, 10, 11, 12 a day in many cases. And yet this is what we fixate on. Why, I don't know. It's a process, I guess, is what it's been. But I, for the life of me, do not get the level of demonization headed towards the zoo and headed towards the mom, because they did, under those difficult circumstances, exactly what they needed to do. It's not close. It's not a close call. For me, there's nothing to discuss. They did what they had to do. If you want to talk about not having zoos, we can have that discussion, right? I'll go my glasses. But in all honesty, as long as you got zoos and you have situations like that, you're going to pick the child every time over the animal, as sad as that might be to PETA.
The pecking order had already been pretty clearly established,
yes,
right? Given that the people are there to see the animals and not vice versa. If it was the other way and animals were watching the people.
Which is maybe not a bad idea.
And maybe we could flip that. The more I've thought about this, though, I blame the zoo a lot more than I blame the parents, because
if you're going to blame anybody, yes.
We're both parents, and we think we're good parents. You can be good parents and still lose track of your kid for 4 seconds, and you'd like to think that they're not going to end up in an embankment with a gorilla, as sad as that is. And I think what the zoo needs to do is protect us against ourselves. I know you love that. When people, you love legislation against stupidity, and you love all of those things. But if you're going to have the zoo, you're going to have to obviously have better safeguards here.
Yeah, but it'll go away until the next animal story, I'm guessing.
Pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the lightning round. Let's start with the U.S. Department of Justice decides not to prosecute Minneapolis police in the shooting death of Jamar Clark. Dan.
Well, I'm not sure anybody should be surprised by this result, because, as was pointed out at the news conference, the threshold for any kind of prosecution here was even higher at this level than it was the case itself. So, sadly, I don't think, my guess is people have been entrenched on this one on both sides of it from the beginning. and the testimony or even the details or even the DNA wasn't going to matter to people. This is just the next step in the process.
A lot of different evidence, a lot of different reasonable doubts. That's what they talked about. The burden of proof, like you said, is ridiculously high.
And the handcuff part of this, they could never prove, which was a big part of it as well.
Okay, next up, Katie Couric is under fire. She's the executive producer and narrator for a new documentary called Under the Gun. Critics say there was a dramatic pause added during one of her interviews, making it seem as if she was stumping her interviewees by one of her questions. Justin.
This is why I'm glad we're in radio. We don't do cheap stuff like this.
I was going to say, I hope Lori never does
These TV people, they're all about the drama. They're all about adding it.
And the music.
The music was great.
Yeah, it wasn't just the stoppage. It was also
the music, the pauses, all of it. The looks on their face. Yeah, they took it from a documentary and they made it a drama. And Katie Couric, of all people, who's been in the business forever, should probably know a little bit.
She doubled down on it and then I think realized it was an embarrassment. And the sad thing again is, maybe there's good stuff in the documentary, but that gets lost.
Now it's gone.
Because this becomes the focus, that you lied to people in a way that you clearly thought was to your advantage.
And you didn't really need to either. Just present the stuff.
And Justin, just remember, you're one of those TV people now.
No.
TV people.
No TV people.
I don't have enough. Never does anything like that.
I don't have enough shirts. I've already recycled shirts. I don't have a wardrobe.
Next up, the top two players in the NBA square off, LeBron James and Steph Curry. The Cavaliers won, but Curry wasn't himself in Game 1. Justin.
He wasn't, and it didn't matter. And Klay Thompson really wasn't himself, and it didn't matter because Sean Livingston, is that his name? I had to double check.
A guy Flip liked, by the way.
Liked him a lot. Yeah. It went crazy, and we kind of just saw the Cavs be their disjointed self. It is though, Steph Curry versus LeBron for a number of different reasons in this series, right? LeBron's trying to reestablish himself. He's trying to get that third championship. And Steph Curry is trying to say, last year wasn't a fluke, and I actually am the best player in the NBA.
With their victory last night, the Warriors, in their last 100 games, have a record of 86-14.
Pretty good.
How many years do we have to go back for the Wolves to get to 86 victories?
86 victories? 10? We'll do it next week.
Yeah,
see the clipboard that Steve Kerr smashed?
That was brilliant.
Intensity.
Seemed to work.
The finals.
Absolutely.
Intensity. You don't get it anywhere else.
No.
And we want to end the show by the way we started it, by remembering Ron Rosenbaum. He died Sunday at the age of 68. Final thoughts. I know I am going to miss him. He was very passionate, and I liked the time we had together on the show, guys.
Well, yeah, I hope we can keep this part light, because he warned me, because he knew it was coming. Said, I don't want a lot of, real serious sanctimony about me. He hated that stuff. It's one of the things we liked about him.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the funniest thing will be, as we were trying to figure out whether we were going to come back to try this show after having done some last summer, I just asked for a little bit of time. Ron would never give me that time. He'd always find a way. Every call would be, I think I might be wanting to go see my son in Asia, but I got to plan ahead. Do you think? And so there was this ongoing battle with him to find ways to get to the bottom of whether I wanted to do it or not doing it. It was just classic Ron, just relentless.
And it speaks to kind of my lasting memory that I wanted to get to, how much he loved doing this show with you, how much he loved doing the radio show, how much he loved working with Lori and Brett and everybody here. He loved the show. He loved the performance of it. He loved being on camera. He loved everything about it, and specifically working with all of you guys. So that's what I'll remember.
Yeah, this was a labor of love, and that's one of the saddest parts, because we were just sort of getting off the ground, and the idea that he couldn't be a part of that, I know, is